Thank you very much. So let me quickly dash to where we were. It was network, there was some fluctuation. We're having that. Thank God I had two, like me, I'm ready for them. So if one fails, right. So, so we're talking about social engineers and how they use different techniques, right? Or for social engineering. And I was trying to explain farming. Farming is where you are redirected to a certain site, and the focus is to gather information or intel, confidential information. Things about like your credit card, could be things about your banking details, health information. For us, for as it is today in this part of the country, the most sought after confidential information remains our financial information, right? By the time we eventually align to some details that identify human beings, like perhaps say health information, say maybe academic information and the rest of them, you'd realize that this is a very big thing. So there are different motivation techniques, right? Or method of influence for social engineering. What's the thing that motivates them? Typically, just want to get information that they consider is valid, and especially for research guys, right? People who do research and development. It's not a thriving sector yet. It's thriving in some places, but you can imagine when we begin to come up with solutions, maybe about power, solutions about biodegradation, or we'll have start coming up with solution about stuff agriculture. When we begin to have major research centers, you'd realize that this information might be kept in a particular safe place, and somebody wants to steal it and be able to do something with it, right? And so on. So it will become a main thing, especially when people begin to obtain your personally identifiable information. All of those stuff. Passwords are some, you know, typically your personal identifiable information. For us in our part of the country, we have our voters identification number. We have our national identification number. We have our BVN, bank verification number. We have our, well, these are for financial institutions. We have maybe, matriculation number or perhaps, what's it called? No. Yes, matriculation number for studies. And of course, that reveals students' records and the rest of them. These are information that are considered very, very important, and they are personal, but somebody can actually exploit them. So the shoulder surfing, that's when somebody peeps over your shoulder, right? And person is attempting to obtain some information. It looks like it doesn't happen. It happens a lot. Okay, so let's look at social engineering attacks, right? Now, social engineering can be accomplished through email or misdirection of web pages and prompting a user to click something that leads to the attacker's site where they gain information, right? Now, a lot of sites that we go to, because we usually don't, how does it pay attention to it? Let's go back to networks a little, right? There's what is called the three-way handshake. And the three-way handshake is the conversation that has to occur between a requesting device and a giving device. Now, the requesting device is, of course, the client. So let's say client and a server. Now, each time a client joins a network, the goal is to use a service. That service is hosted somewhere. And again, like I said, there are protocols guarding how these services are used. So typically, it is expected, right, that a client wanting to gain access to a particular service hosted somewhere must make a request. And so the initiating conversation would usually or naturally come from the client. And it is normally what we call the synchronization, right? SYN. It's a synchronization request. Now, the server, of course, that is posed to giving whatever kind of service understands, right, containing each synchronization request for the various services would be the protocols that it understands. So the moment a server sees a synchronization request coming from a client or synchronization request, he knows that this is coming from a client, and the client is requesting a service. Of course, containing there will be one or two things. Like for DHCP, it is different. It is different for FTP. It is different for HTTP. But however, there is this synchronization, which is the initiating conversation that is requesting contained will be details requesting service. The server would now have to respond. Responding would have to be two.
Hello, wait.
Come again. Okay. So the requesting device, oh, sorry, the server now would have to look at or respond to that particular request by sending two packets. One, containing one that is. One would be a synchronization acknowledgement saying that the synchronization request that you sent, I acknowledge it, right? And it is at the backdrop of that acknowledgement that I am now sending my own synchronization request. So it's simply saying we need to synchronize. Well, how this happens is like somebody waking up in the morning or you go into an office. What you say normally is good morning, sir, or good morning, ma. That is a synchronization request. You are beginning. You have not explained what you want to do. You're just cautiously, registering your presence. Then the person will say, good morning. How can I help you? So this is the person doing two things. The person who entered the place sends a synchronization request saying good morning, right? Hoping to gain the person's attention. The person whose attention they want to gain will now say, yes, good morning, right? That's a synchronization acknowledgement, right? Then that person will now go ahead to say, how may I help you? This is the person's now synchronization. Now establishing that there's got to be a conversation between you and I, right? By power. Okay, so I was saying, no, I wasn't explaining. Oh, I see. That's what was happening. I said that for by power, someone said, so I was trying to explain something using by power as an example. I said I heard sometime that some guy set up a site that was redirecting people for purchasing power. By power is like the sites, the website where people actually can go to connect to servers where they can purchase units for electricity. And of course, you have to put in a lot of information there. Your name will be there, your address will be there, your state will be there. Then at some point, ask you to put your meter number there. Then you always have to put in a debit card or an ATM card number, right? And typically, some of these sites are phony. I'm not saying the buy power is phony, but people created a site like that. So when you got to that place, you were farmed, you were redirected to a particular place that looked like that, right? So that's what I was trying to say. All right, it happened. I heard about it happening. Yeah. All right. So um, the conversation between the client and the server. So the server would respond. Now, typically, this conversation between the both guys establishes a connection. Once the connection is established, they now have to go through some conversation, which would be saying, hey, the client says, okay, I want a website. The website I'm looking for is netacad.com. And the server responds, oh, yeah, it's actually at my disposal. So I have 10,000, I have 4 windows. Each window contains 2,500 sequence numbers from 1 to 2,500. And then the client says, that is a lot too. I can't accommodate that. Can we readjust? All these conversations are happening between the client and the server. This is exactly what these hackers take advantage of. Now, so when somebody has been hacked, you cannot be hacked sitting alone without initiating some conversation for gaining access to using a service. It can't happen. There must be some application, a service on your system that is interacting with some service or service giver somewhere. Then somebody slips into the middle and compromises that conversation, right? So social engineering can be done in person by an insider or an outsider entity or over the phone. Primary example is attackers leveraging normal user behavior, very regular, walk into a place and choose to say, let me try to explain this in a way that I was explaining about the server client. Let's assume that I think this example is in the curriculum as well. I read something about it. Assuming that a user visits a website. So he clicked on a link, right? And the link maybe was sent to him in the mail. Say, okay, to register for this class, click here. And that's going to be happening a lot as we move on because some people join this group by clicking on a link. What if now bait we bait now, just one cellular, you know? Okay. All right, no problem, Sani. Thank you for your no problem, right? So you click on the link, and the hope is to join a particular site. Now, If your computer or your device has been compromised, how do you mean compromised? How can my system be compromised? Maybe you had collected a file from someone, you know. How did you collect the file? You got a flash, USB flash, and copied the file, movie, music, right? Video for study, and the file was compromised. What compromises it? Well, some guy somewhere is looking for who to just attack. So he creates a script and throws it up there on some free site. Somebody goes to download it. The person who is being compromised may not know, right? So if your computer has been compromised and you go ahead and click on that site, right? Your system, right, would have to have been modified, right? Now, because it is modified, when we say modify, what do you mean? What do you mean? Typically, maybe attached to your browser, right? So because you click on that link from the browser being compromised now knows, okay, this is a request going to a particular site. It could be a legitimate site. The person clicking on it is hoping to go to a legitimate site, but because you're browsing, your application, your browser has been compromised, it redirects you, right, to a malicious site that appears to be legitimate. Okay. And this happens a lot with DNS attacks. There's also what is called um, SQL injection, where a script is actually injected into the SQL language, the query language of the browsers. So now when you go to that site, right, you download a payload or download and install. Just the fact that you were redirected to that site downloads an application and sits on your system, and you don't know, right? But you have been mal-advertised, or you have been advertised to a domain which is very compromised. And this happens a lot. I don't know if you've ever gone to a site, you're about to download something, and then it opens multiple sites showing you Bet Niger, sports. Sometimes it shows some very funny stuff, right? Sorry, Bello. It happens. You may not have known. It's just that you were sent somewhere. You just go there and the thing just keeps trying to load. You shall close it. But by this time, they don't drop the thing already. You understand? So that's an example of how this can happen to someone. Except, of course, you do some scanning, right? And for some reason, your device tells you that there's a behavior, right, that is not consistent with how your system is supposed to behave. So we've observed that this device is working very funny. You have to go ahead and then catch it, right? So let's move on and see some of the behaviors. One, email phishing. Now, with phishing, an attacker presents to a user a link or an attachment that looks like a valid, trusted resource. Typically, the only way a link contains executable actions. A link in itself, once you click on it, it activates a process. So once you click on it, that process is activated. Now, it depends on what process is attached. It could be a browser process, could be a particular application attached to it. All you need is just you initiating that action. Now, if when the user clicks it, he or she is prompted to disclose confidential information such as his or her username and password. Now, this is very, very wide and bogus, right? Could be those, sometimes you're trying to download a file, download any of these tools, and then you are asked to trial period from this time to this time. And for some reason, in the trial period, you are asked to put your card, put your email address. Sometimes they don't even do much. They just tell you to go ahead, to continue, put your email address. And you put your email address and then redirect you back. Now they've been able to get your email address. What does that mean? It means that you have been subscribed to their mailing list, and they can be sending you links, plenty links, which of course there's a system within the email system, or there's a structure within the email system that can flag some of these things which they call spam, which are more or less unwanted information. There are certain behaviors. Now, I let me not talk over this. How do these things get detected? You know, let me use an example. We have in our country two organizations that are responsible for approving what people ingest and what people use. We have NAFDAC, right? And then we have SON, or Standard Organization of Nigeria. Now, it is expected that if it is something that somebody needs to consume, right, then NAFDAC should have done some tests, which means that before you begin to sell, Before you begin to produce, you got to go to them and receive an approval, which suggests that you must show them there's a table. Oh, what do you want to do? Want to do something? Is it health related? Is it just food? Is it skincare? Right? Is it hair? Is it for, all of this stuff you have to explain. Then they'll have to, well, as it's supposed to be, oh, right? They'll send people who come and check that. When they check, they say, okay, you have passed the test, and then they go ahead and give you the approval. The approval come with a particular number or a seal, which is expected to be attached to the product. So each time somebody sees your product, they will see that seal. And by seeing the seal, you know. Two things are the problem for us in that sector. People are not educated to knowing what should be edible or what is safe to eat, whether it is drug or skincare or food, right? They shall just buy it. As long as somebody tells them it works, they go ahead and buy it. Now, so there must be some education of the public to say these are the things that people need to eat, right? Because you should have this, which is done sometimes by National Orientation Agency. No problem. No problem, Sani. Right? So the most National Orientation Agency goes around to just tell people, hey, this, that, hey, that. If it's like this, don't eat it. If it has a standard, then go ahead. Now, just like I've explained, let's take this insight and bring it back into the applications or services or stuff that or softwares that we use. Every software, every application must pass the test of a certificate awarding authority, right? So what we observe, all of these guys are taking advantage of is, it will be good to know that this conversation that occur between client and server must follow that protocol. Those protocols have laid down standards. So if anything is contrary to that behavior, right, then it is flagged by all of what we call antivirus or some kind of tools, that we use. So he's looking for anomalies. Now, so typically, just like how you go to a school and study and get a certificate, the vice chancellor will sign, the registrar will sign, and of course, they go to student records and say, okay, well, the registrar has the record of whoever enters into the school. So, okay, this person entered and finished at so and so time. The vice chancellor, of course, as being the chief security officer of that institution, appends his signature as well, right? So I think some cases, maybe the dean, I don't know. But then there's some certification, right? Or some signature that is appended to the certificate saying this certificate is awarded to this particular candidate because the person has satisfied what is expected of this institution. And by so doing, we accord the person disqualification. So that whenever you present that certificate anywhere, whoever wants to query it can query the institution. Once they query the institution will say, yeah, we offered that certificate. But if there was a problem with the certificate, they say, no, we have revoked that certificate. So it's very important. This is the same thing happens to applications or software that we use. This is part of what helps the system to be up to date and not be subject to this kind of attacks. Because these attacks take advantage of those limitations that exist, especially when people use applications that they did not purchase, or they go ahead and purchase them, and then there were some challenges with them which require that they should do some patches or some updates or some upgrade, and do not do that. That throws you out for all of this kind of attack. So a phisher or phishing, right, typically takes advantage of trusted connections. So with phishing, an attacker presents to a user a link to an attachment that looks like a valid, trusted resource. For example, click on this link, right? And the link is maybe an Excel sheet for you to update your information about whatever, remuneration or maybe records. Then that particular application opens up and it is a Microsoft Office application that is not registered. It throws open a door. And is the person an attacker? Perhaps not. Perhaps a valid person. Or perhaps he is an attacker. But once he sends that, and your application is such that it's been signed by a certificate of awarding authority, and it is valid, it's not like it's impossible, but it's actually slim. Chances are slim. So typically, phishing is it baits you to click on that particular link, and then you are prompted to give information like file number, date of employment, all of this stuff. If one person fills it and they get it, they now have a file, what's it called now? A structure of data structure, right? Of what the records of the people who work in that place will look like. Spear phishing, on the other hand, is targeted at a very specific group or individual. So that's why it's spare. Because if you are fishing using spare, the best you can do is catch the number of fish. If you do fishing, like in the case of the PHISHING fishing, it's like throwing a net to catch lots of fish. You can catch lots of fish, sometimes crabs, sometimes shoe that's inside the water, things that you need, things you don't need. But spear fishing has identified the fish and is following it gently to attack it, which means that it could be a company or an individual. They will study the victim, right? Or study the organization. And then they're able to identify, oh, this is what their mail looks like. Okay, in their organization, what they use as emails are first name and the first initial of the last name, right? Or some use last name and first initial of first name. You get my point? Or some use designation, like vice chancellor at xyzuniversity.com, registrar at, or bossa at. So we now know that's how they look like, or FO at, or COO at. So once we know that's the case, what I'll do now is, okay, nice. I can create by social engineering, create a mail coming from that guy to specific people in a particular project, authorizing them to approve money. Having listened to that conversation now, it looks legitimate, right? So typically identifying a specific person. Whaling is similar to phishing and spear phishing. It's an attack targeted at high-profile business executives and key individuals in a company. Like threat actors conducting spear phishing attack, threat actors in whaling conduct this attack by creating emails and web pages to serve malwares or collect sensitive information. So I played a video the last time. This guy did whaling. Typically, that's what he did, right? Where he observed from the video we watched how that a group of people doing some research were normally going somewhere to hang out, to bowl. And he just dropped something on that particular link, and somebody walks in there with a laptop and picks it and gets into the office. So the main goal in whaling attack is to steal sensitive information or compromise the victim system, and then target other key or high-profile guys. So what is the benefit of learning this? Typically, is this: the easiest way to solve most of these particular attacks, as it were, without having to buy tools or invite some security operation center guy and analyst to do whatever, is to ensure that everybody in the organization is educated on what to look out for, right? And this should be done at least twice a month, right? If they are paying them good money, then they should work for it, right? So let's go on. Vishing is short for voice phishing. It's a social engineering attack carried out in a phone conversation. The attacker persuades the user to reveal private information and financial information or information about another person or a network. There's a video that I have. I didn't prepare it. I just thought about it now. It was a lady, right? It was like a seminar, like is it a seminar now? What they call that thing where professionals gather, right? So they all gathered, and some guy was saying he was a reporter. He reports on IT. So he was like, somebody told him, like, look, hey, I'm going to get your wife to give me a. Now I'm going to get your company, not the wife. I'm going to get your company to help change email address to something I can use. And the guy's like, no, it can't happen. Says, okay, no wahala. So the lady calls I think I don't know what particular service, calls the company, and then she played the sound of a baby crying in the background. The babe played it neat, and she was sounding like the guy's wife. All right. So she knew his email address and told him that she wanted him to please include an email. That the problem is that she's now at home taking care of the baby. He's at work. And then while she was talking, she kept acting frustrated. She walked into the psychology of the person in the company. The person was like, oh, person succumbed because he was hearing the sound of a baby. And just, the person was socially engineered to think that the person who placed the call is the wife of the guy. Like joke, the company lady was able to add another email address, right? And she used the line she used to convince the person was to say, he usually may not be around. He travels a lot, and she would need to have access to their account to make one or two changes. And this one that he's not around, that she's forgotten the password, she doesn't know where she kept it. But can she add another one to make it easy for her to access? The person fell for it, and neat, she did it within less than 45 seconds. The man was wowed. So there are some people who can actually talk you into, buying, they'll talk into buying sand that you don't need. Okay, so that's what happens in Vishing. Is a voice call, just convince you to do stuff. The goal of Vishing is typically to steal. Let me not put it as credit cards or numbers. Is to steal PIIs, information that is very valid, right? For part of our country now, we can take out those credit card numbers. We can look maybe debit card numbers, or credit card numbers also count. Social security numbers, or what we call NIN, and other information that can be used in identity theft scheme. So once I have this information, I can act like you. When we have not yet gotten there where a certain identity is used to be able to perhaps transact, and open up all stuff. Basically, they impersonate and spoof you. They imitate you, pretend to be you, right? While they perform the phishing attacks. So smishing, right, which is short message phishing, because phishing has been an effective tactic or threat for threat actors. They have found ways other than using emails to fool their victims into following malicious links to activate malware from emails. Phishing campaign. Sorry, excuse me. Hold on, please. Let me do something quickly. I seem to not have access to the link. Yusuf Husseini, your background is noisy. With all right, no problem. I've taken care of that. I think I'll be doing that going forward. Okay. All right. So typically, since they realize that phishing works, they have found other ways other than using emails to fool their victims into following malicious links or activating malware from emails. Phishing campaigns often use text messages to send malware or malicious links to mobile devices. Common aims and objective of Vishing. The common aims and objective of Vishing is to get information. Well, all of this, any social engineering approach, the common aim, the focus is to steal information from you that can be used to look like you, right? They can get valid information, login details, credentials. They just get confidential information that is supposed to be available to only you, right? They get this information from you. Things like maybe your passport number, your NIN, your BVN, all of this stuff. Well, let me say this while I'm saying this. Please, if you have to register a SIM card, please do not register it on the side of the road, no matter how in a hurry you are. No matter how terrible it is, ensure that you go into the telecommunication company, their office, right? Please don't do with all of these guys that have umbrellas on the side of the road. I'm not spoiling their business, but they've been constituting a lot of nuisance. They could, I think before Pantami stepped down, before during his time, there was some form of allowance. I think they said the maximum anybody could have as phone number was 3 or so. Was it 5? Can't remember now. But then eventually they opened it up to say that you could actually attach, is it like up to 9 phone numbers to a particular NIN? I'm not sure the number now. So what these guys do is that once you go to register your SIM card, they put your name, right? And they don't submit it. So it's left open, or they have your NIN, as it were, which they can use to attach other numbers to it. So, and typically once something happens, a phone call is made, and they're tracking it, they'll track it with that database and track it down to a particular NIN number. If it's your NIN number, now they'll catch you. We'll be talking to you tomorrow. The intelligence available, if you have good money ahead, they can go back and track some things. If you don't have, they don't mess you up before you know what's happening. So please, if you have to register a SIM card or if somebody has to register for it, please instruct them. Go to the telecom center. Go there. Go to the center. Not the what they call. You can buy what's it called. You can buy data, buy MiFi, buy a router from all these other sides. But with registering of your SIM card, go to the telecommunication company. Because just like the question you're asking here, Mohammed, you're asking what are the common aims and objective of Vishing. The common aim and objective of Vishing is simply to collect confidential information. Now, confidential information can be given even without them social engineering you. Well, that is also a social engineering technique. All right. So you're welcome. You're welcome. So you can help mitigate SMS phishing attack by not clicking on links from any unknown message sender. Typically, um, I always advise. I have this happening to me every now and then. I don't know, perhaps because I interact with a lot of people. Some people call me or send me messages, maybe on SMS or perhaps even on chats. They have the privilege of having my number because we belong in a certain group. But then they just jump at conversations from nowhere. And I just, those kind of people I don't respond to, to just not be rude. But if you fall within the category of people who have people's number and you have access, what I would advise for you to do is to ensure that you introduce yourself, explain how you met, and all of this stuff. And typically, except of course the person gave you the number, right? Because I heard in some climes it is a criminal offense to get somebody's number from some other person. If I didn't give you my number and you have access to my number, how did you get this number is a good question, and it can land you in court. Nigeria is waking up, it might get there. So typically, once people send you messages, right, with what's it called? What's it called now? They are I've forgotten what it's called. There's that word is called in digital marketing, where they try to get you to commit to an action, to what's it called? I've forgotten. They get you to do a particular action, right? Maybe click or maybe, all of this stuff. Please do not delete it straight. Any number that you don't have. Because these days, illegitimate ways of getting your number plenty. Could just be in a group somewhere. Somebody just harvests the group's number and goes to sell them somewhere. So what you need to do to mitigate it is to ensure that you don't click on links, right? You should not click on any link sent via text message, especially if you do not expect such a message to be sent to you. So again, even if you expect such messages, right? Once the message has been sent, you should be notified. A call, no go bad. Guy, I don't send them, check. I've sent you the mail, right? There should be a phone call following. Don't just click on it and say, I sent you a mail, you didn't click on it. Well, that's why some people actually lose some kind of connections like that. So similarly, if you receive a message saying that there is a problem with a credit card transaction or a bill, call your bank directly instead of clicking on a link. In short, don't call the bank. Walk into the bank. Because if you call the bank, who knows? They might have actually even done some form of farming, right? So, but please confirm you can hear me. I'm having notification and my internet is shaky. Don't worry, I'm covered. I have two connections. One fail, you will go the other one. Whoever becomes the host after I'm logged out should please help me by putting me back. So if you receive a message telling you that you have won something, this is probably an SMS phishing attempt, and you should not click the link. So get it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ladmiji. Right? So there's USB drop key, right? Now, many penetration testing guys and attackers have used USB drop to attack some people, and it worked, right? Like somebody walks into a place, right, and picks a USB. When we talk about it, it sounds like it's a joke, but you can walk into a place, or it's also possible you go for a conference and they give you USB, say take. It's part of the package. What if the guys who are at the desk who are giving you those stuff that are packaged in the back is also a threat actor? And he knows that cybersecurity guys or ethical hackers are coming for a particular meeting, and he wants to just get to know what they are saying. He's not registered, but he just comes into the place saying, "No, I want to volunteer as somebody at the desk." Then they are giving out USB. Then he sneaks in one of those USBs, or he takes a USB that they are giving and copies a particular script on it. Right? So this is how this can work. So this type of attack involves just leaving a USB stick unattended. Now remember, you can be high placed to the point where you don't pick a USB, so that may not fall for us. So maybe no, you're too big to pick USB. So but what if it was given to you as part of the package from a conference that you went for? And the guy who gave it is not maybe the organizer, but somebody snuck into that place by social engineering and became one of the guys at the desk who is helping, right? So oftentimes, users think that the devices are lost, right, and insert them into their system. So let's put it this way. Let's assume he didn't pick it. Oftentimes, you may collect it and say, they gave me this thing. Oh, you just connect it to your system. Then your system will just blink. It just blinks, right? Or just hangs, right? And then you don't know what happened. Then after that, system begins to act funny. So typically, there's a way that scripts can actually be added into USB devices. And and then those of you who travel a lot, right? Please carry power bank. There's this thing that they have in some airports where you can go and plug your phone to charge. Please don't try it. They will juice jack you, right? So please don't try it. Carry power bank as you travel, please. If you have to buy two and keep one. Charge them and travel with them. Bad as it bad, you cannot be too stranded. You would have gotten to where you're getting before the power bank would die. Don't on it in the plane. On it after you come down from the plane. So another social engineering technique involves dropping a key ring containing a USB stick that may also include pictures of kids or pets as an actual key or two keys. This type of personal touches may prompt a victim to try to identify the owner in order to return the key. So you can just carry it. And for you know what's happening, OT law. Right. Now, there's water hole attack. This is a targeted attack that occurs when an attacker profiles website, right, that the intended victim accesses. So typically, I go to certain sites, and sometimes you know that these days web pages actually prompt you to ask, should I keep your personal record, whether it is personal or I know some people tell you that no. Some people tell you that no, if you are working in an office and it's not the system is a public system, don't tell your system to remember passwords. I'll tell you that even if it is your own SHA, right? Don't do that because every now and then those stuff harvest information. So if the attacker locates a website that can be compromised, the website is then injected with the code that is designed to redirect the user when the user returns to that site. So typically, I can gather information of a particular site that you go to, right? Even netaccount.com can be mimicked, right? And you can see it listed among one of your sites. So waterhole attacks are often designed to profile users of specific organizations. To avoid having a website compromised as part of such an attack, an administrator should use proper programming methods and scan. Oh, yeah. So I was reading something today. This point points out the CEO of one company, one of those news you see on your Google when you attempt. We heard that 21 to 25% of programs or of applications today are coded by AI. There was a time when people can sit down and crack their head from morning till morning to create applications. Well, that era is going. People actually create speeches now by using AI. So they've advanced it to also creating applications and softwares by using AI. So be careful the sites that you go to. And this is why it is very important to have certain what we call HIDs or host intrusion detection systems or host intrusion prevention systems installed. What we're talking about is like antiviruses that have internet or network security as part of it. Right? I don't know any of them because I'm not advertising for them, but whenever you purchase any of such stuff, ensure that you have those features attached. Internet or network security. That's one. Number two, ensure that you try. I know it's hard, it's very expensive, but try to install applications that are licensed. Don't use an application that is not licensed. If you don't want to do that with Windows, then go to open source and start learning, like the Linux distribution, right? So one way to handle water holing is to simply educate people. There's nothing that beats it. Tell them. And typically, once people know about it, it's hard for it to happen to them. Right, so let's look at physical attacks as we begin to draw towards the end. Right, so as a pen tester or a red team, I remember I have the blue team and the red team guys. The blue team are the guys that work for the organization, right, who are supposed to be preventing the attack. The red team guys are the guys who we employ who are do the attacks. You might be asked to simulate a real world threat actor or criminal. Sorry. You might be asked to simulate what a real world threat actor or a criminal can do to compromise an organization's physical security in order to gain access to infrastructure, building systems, and employees. So what do you do? One of the things that I'm going to advise that we do, right, is to ensure that we have what's it called now? What is it called? Let's get our VMware installed, right? Because that's one way we can simulate most of this environment. So this is 4.3, yeah, right? Physical attacks, right? So simulating the environment typically, right, is when we say physical attacks, is often something that people think can't happen because we think we live in a civil environment, right? And somebody can actually, you see people dress up well and thief. I think it was 2 years ago that there was a video that was trending of some guy in National Assembly who was a staff who walked into the place to steal. I think he heard there was some money they had taken there. By money, now the guy was kneeling down and begging, Kuya Kuri, Kuya Kuri. Meaning, please be, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So everybody's a suspect. until otherwise proven, right? So as long as you have an infrastructure, right, no matter how elaborate it is, right, um, if an actor can physically, right, access the facility and gain access to the infrastructure, then your security is rendered ineffective, right? So it's very, very important to understand that, look, this is it's very possible, right? So we need to understand that what we're going to try to look at here is to see how the various types of physical attacks that exist, right? Number one, piggybacking. Okay, so it's usually when persons tag along with persons that have authorization. So it's not very common. Okay, yeah, it's not very common, but I don't know where you all work. Maybe in places where you work, you may need to, log in, or the doors are locked for the purpose of maybe attempting to know when you clocked in. They may have some biometric features, which could include maybe thumbprint that opens the door, you know, voice activated system that opens the door, a card that you can swipe that opens the door. Please, wherever you go to, whether the person is your friend, make sure, right, that the person use their card. Once you come out, make the person come out with in card too. Very important. The reason is if something were to happen, right, you would realize that at the time of the occurrence, the record will show that it was only you that entered. No matter what you speak, saying that no, we were three that entered and we three of us entered, but then the record doesn't show three. The record shows that it was your credential that's logged in. So many years ago, I think it was so many years ago when I started out, right? There was a student that we had who came, I think he was working with then Zane. He came back, he was one of our students and then went out, got a job. I think from what he said, they exposed them to some core network environment. There were 10 of them, and they had to do tests every week. There were 10 weeks, and you had to be scoring 9 at least. Because if you score 3.8, just pack your bag and come back. So they eventually finished, and one of those guys came. He came out tops. He was part of them. And there was one guy who was in charge, according to his story, was in charge of the system that was vending units, these credits that we load, right? So typically how they operated was they were running shifts. Some people can run back to back, right? 2 days shift and go and rest. Some other person can come, like a team of people. So one of the guys, one of the days when he was going, he didn't log out for some reason. But that day was when he went on a vacation. He left. Now, when he went on the vacation, the guy who took over observed that the login credentials of this other guy was active. Instead of him to log in, he went ahead and was using that person's credential to vend. This was when they would create cards and print cards and then dispatch cards. The guy created cards, and so those vouchers, tell those stuff, and sold a lot of them. So I think at the end of a particular season like that, they were trying to do some form of checks and realized that, oh boy, the guy had overshot his quota, but then the financial records didn't tally. So now so they apprehend the guy. And the guy didn't have what to say. Some other guy who was investigating the stuff, some audit guy, forensic audit guy, was looking at stuff and then realized that, come on, what's your name? You realize the guy's name. So, but you were on vacation on so and so time. How come your account, and they had a policy of not giving login details to any person? Turned out that they now resorted, of course, back to, okay, who are the guys that are on work? Then they went back to their cameras and realized that, okay, the only guys who were at work were these other 2 guys in the other team. And they subjected them only to realize that the other guy had actually used his colleagues' credentials to vend a lot of all of this stuff. So piggybacking is when somebody can use your credentials to access some resources. Could be a door. Usually, um, with your consent. It's like, hey, please hold the elevator. Please hold the door. Help me. Somebody can walk into a place acting like he's carrying something heavy. Guy making using card will no fish shout. So tailgating is somewhat like that. It's essentially the same. The difference is just that it occurs without your authorization, which is typically so piggybacking is you, right? I'm nice enough to use my credentials to allow you access. But tailgating is when I notice that I'm just hanging out waiting for you to open the door. And before the door shuts, I can dash in quickly, use a leg, use my hand to hold it, such that the records will only show that you came in, but it won't capture when I came in, right? So that's tailgating. But both piggybacking and tailgating can be defeated through the use of access control vestibles. So what do we mean? Typically, everybody should log in. Log in. So an access control vestibule is a small space that can usually fit only one person. Log in, come into a place so you can only allow one person enter. For example, you see those banks, those doors in front of banks, those are those vestibules where those ones that can take one. You know, at some point they used to allow only one person, right? Then after a while, those security guys now started telling you, oh, enter, 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 okay, enter, enter. The first person in front, once he lifts up his phone, right, or whatever device he's holding, and that tester or the detector is able to identify that this person is the thing is not a threat, then every other person inside will pass. So what if somebody behind is carrying a gun, right, and so on? So the first set must be closed before the others will open, creating a sort of waiting room where people are identified, logged in properly, they are profiled before they can now go. That way they cannot escape. So another thing is multi-factor authentication. Is always used in conjunction with the access control vestibule. So typically, once you enter that place, log in as in thumbprint or voice activated or use your card, typically. Okay. Then dumpster diving. This is not very popular in this our place, but it works. So typically, with dumpster diving, a person would scavenge for private information in the garbage and recycling containers. This is why most organizations shred stuff. They shred CDs, shred files of what's it called, papers and all of this stuff. So to protect sensitive documents, an organization should store them in a safe place as long as possible. When they are no longer needed, the organization should shred them, shred them. They sell them in the market, shred papers. Of course, after shredding them, I'll advise that you burn them as well. It's not to say some bad people will not use some stuff for, but it depends on what exactly the person is looking for. So dumpster divers might find information on paper and or on hard drives or removable media. So ensure that you shred them well. We talked about shoulder stuffing already. Typically, somebody is trying to just peep over your shoulder to obtain information. So let's not flog that. Typically, ensure that some people can even go as far as using what's it called, binoculars or monoculars or telescopes, right, from a window somewhere. So how do you avoid that? If your system is facing a particular window and it's glass, use blinds. And some other person can be monitoring you from the camera as well. As much as possible, let the camera not focus on your screen. Let it focus on, you where you are seated. So typically, another way to prevent this from happening is to train users. Then there's badge cloning. Badge cloning is when attackers can actually clone your badge and use your badge to log in. Right? The attacker can clone a badge. All right, so thank you. So Umar Mahood became the host when I stepped out, and thank you, Umar, for unmuting me. Thank you. So please, in case this network fluctuates and somebody takes over, once I log back in, it's just network that is acting up here. But don't worry, we have it under control. Zamu Maganish, as we say here in the North. We're doing medicine. All right, so somebody asked the question, how do we prevent tailgating? And I was trying to explain. Imagine that entering a house requires using a key, and the company says everybody should have their key. Now, each time you put your key and open the door, there's a record that shows that you entered. So if we're five who are coming to the office, the way to prevent anybody from attacking or using my login details to enter is, if you are five of you, enter, put the key, open the place, enter, close it. The next person should use their key and all. That way the records are kept. Tailgating is when somebody is waiting. He doesn't want to use his key. Of course, anybody who is doing that is attempting to want to go to an aspect of the meeting, of the room, where they do not have access to. Can you hear me?